On August 5, 1944, a teletype clicked in Berlin. The message was concise. The Wola district was cleared. The civilian death toll exceeded 30,000 in 24 hours. This was not a battle. It was an eviction notice served with flamethrowers. On August 1st, the Polish resistance initiated the uprising. The German command responded with a mathematical grid search. The map of Warsaw shows the vector. The Dirlewanger brigade entered Wola from the west. They moved street by street. They did not suppress enemy fire. They liquidated the coordinates. On the other side of the Vistula, observers could not see the sun. The smoke from burning residential blocks turned noon into twilight. 12,500 people in one day, in one district. Some estimates triple that number. What density of fire is required for such statistics? The brigade used more than bullets. Sapper Matthias Schenk later testified that ammunition was conserved where possible. Bayonets were standard. Hospital wards, orphanages, cellars. The target was the population itself. Total casualties in the first 2 weeks reached 50,000. That is the population of a mid-sized European city, deleted in 14 days. This was not a unit losing control. It was a state operation. Governor General Hans Frank reviewed the daily progress from his headquarters. He authorized the final update. The report was sent directly to the Reich Chancellery. 2 years before Warsaw, this technology of mass destruction was already standardized in the forests of Belarus. The Wehrmacht classified the operations as Bandenbekämpfung, fighting bandit formations. In reality, the region served as a vast testing ground for scorched earth tactics. The methodology was algorithmic. Encircle the settlement, secure the perimeter, concentrate the biomass. Survivors described a mechanical sequence that did not vary. Dirlewanger would arrive with a 10-man detail. His instruction was purely functional. Shoot them all immediately. The tactical setup required 4 operators with machine pistols. They took positions at the primary exit, usually a barn door. The doors opened. The command was fire freely. Inside the confined space, the cyclic rate of fire ensured total coverage. Women, children, no targeting selection was required. This was not a combat engagement, it was a disposal process. These actions were not hidden from the chain of command. The daily kill counts were typed up, processed by clerks, and filed in Berlin operational data. Official status, special operations, real composition, poachers and killers. To implement a strategy of absolute destruction, the system required a specific type of personnel. Gottlob Berger found them in the cells. Who sanctioned the distribution of weapons to convicts? The order was signed personally by the chief of the SS main office. Berger managed recruitment logistics for the entire organization. In 1940, facing a shortage of manpower, he turned to the penal system. The formation was designated SS-Sonderkommando Dirlewanger. Berger drafted poachers for their marksmanship. He drafted murderers for their lack of inhibition. The Wehrmacht refused to wage this kind of war, so Berger built a unit that would. Field commanders sent urgent telexes reporting the unit's atrocities. Berlin received the complaints. The response was silence. To lead this formation, the SS selected a man whose file should have been burned, a candidate whose record in 1934 guaranteed a prison cell, not a command post. Subject: Oskar Dirlewanger. Born September 26, 1895, Würzburg. His early service record was exemplary. World War I veteran, Iron Cross, 1st and 2nd class. He possessed physical courage. He lacked a moral floor. After the armistice, he drifted into the Freikorps. Street battles replaced trench warfare. Violence became his only currency. Then came the collapse. In 1934, the courts convicted him of sexually abusing a 13-year-old girl. The state stripped him of his PhD. The army stripped him of his rank. The hero became a pariah. Visual contrast defined his reality. An Iron Cross first-class owner wearing a convict's uniform. For any other army, this was the end. For the SS, it was leverage. A man with no reputation is a man with no limits. He had nothing left to lose but his life. Gottlieb Berger pulled strings at headquarters and signed the reinstatement order. His personnel file was reviewed, analyzed, and stamped approved dozens of times. Why did the system protect him from its own judges? Because you do not prosecute a guillotine for being sharp. The true horror of this story is not in the mud of Belarus. It is in a clean, well-lit office in Berlin. A report lands on a mahogany desk. It details the massacre of civilians. It lists the looting of gold. The official reads it. He does not vomit. He does not call the police. He picks up a rubber stamp. Gesehen. Seen. The paper goes into a folder. The folder goes into a steel cabinet. The chaotic screaming of a burning barn is silenced by the orderly clack, clack, clack of a typewriter. The Waffen-SS grew to number 900,000 men. A massive, sprawling administrative machine. Yet this specific unit bypassed the standard hierarchy to answer directly to Heinrich Himmler. Dirlewanger was not a glitch. He was a product line. The bureaucracy evaluated his pathology. It quantified his brutality. It decided he was useful. History focuses on the monster in the trench coat. It ignores the monster in the gray suit. The logistician who calculates the fuel needed to burn a village. The clerk who ensures the ammunition arrives on time. Dehumanization requires infrastructure. Terror requires paperwork. The file grew thicker with every year, but the result never changed. Between 1940 and 1945, the administration processed 11 separate orders for his promotion and deployment. The paper shield disintegrated near Guben in February 1945. The Red Army was closing the distance. Dirlewanger took his 12th combat wound. The medical transport evacuated him to the rear, but the rear no longer existed. On April 22nd, the commander deserted. He stripped off the uniform. He burned the papers. He chose a remote hunting lodge in Upper Swabia over a bunker in Berlin. The plan was to dissolve into the collapse. By May, the Allies held 5 million German prisoners. He tried to become just one more face in the gray mass of the defeated. It worked until June 1st. French occupation forces swept the Altshausen region. They found a man in civilian clothes. He gave a false name. The patrol followed standard protocol and locked him up. In 4 days, this routine arrest would turn into a death sentence. A Jewish survivor walked past the holding cell and identified the face behind the bars. 50,000 verified civilian casualties. That was the metric in the prisoner service record. A file so volatile that even Heinrich Himmler designated the commander as a management liability. Following positive identification, the subject was transferred to the detention unit in Altshausen. Date: June 4, 1945. A single dim lamp illuminated the confinement cell. Inside those walls, judicial protocols ceased to function. This was not a court-martial. No defense counsel was present. The guards identified the detainee based on his crimes, not his rank. The French military administration filed no report regarding the breach of custody standards. Can you hide a murder inside a prison? The French administration simply filled out a form for cardiac arrest. History preserved 2 versions of the same week in June 1945. The official record is clean. Date: June 7th. Cause: vascular collapse. The pen scratched across the death certificate. The clerk signed it. The body went into an unmarked pit. But inside the cell, Luftwaffe Lieutenant Anton Fusinger saw the reality. He watched the guards enter the room night after night between June 4th and June 6th. They didn't come to check a pulse. They came to use their boots. The paper claimed natural causes. The bones proved a violent death. In 1960, forensic teams finally opened the ground in Altshausen. They needed to rule out rumors of an escape to Cairo or Brazil. The soil was cleared. The skull was lifted. A massive fracture split the bone. The damage was consistent with blunt force trauma, not heart failure. The exhumation came 15 years too late to identify the specific killer. The guards were gone. The witnesses were scattered. The French authorities never opened an investigation file. 6 months before the Nuremberg Trials began, the verdict was delivered with rifle butts. The legal machinery of the Allies was still months away from operation. But in the French occupation zone, the timeline was different. Security at the Altshausen detention center was not held by French regulars. The perimeter belonged to the 29th Polish Infantry Grouping. These men were not abstract observers, they were survivors of the general government. They knew the specific topography of Warsaw's destruction. To the French command, Dirlewanger was a high-value prisoner awaiting processing. To the Polish guards, he was a living target. The International Tribunal in November would promise due process, translators, and evidence. It would attempt to answer total war with civilized law. The 29th Infantry did not wait for November. They saw a gap in the bureaucracy, a momentary lapse in supervision where the law looked the other way. The guards turned the key and pushed open the heavy iron door. Between June 4th and June 7th, the judicial history of Oskar Dirlewanger ceased to exist. A fractured skull, massive trauma to the chest, a body broken in a dark cell. The International Military Tribunal never assigned a case number to his file. No prosecutor read the charges. No judge heard the defense. The bureaucracy that manufactured the monster failed to process his disposal. The state machine created a pathogen. It protected him when he was useful. It discarded him when the front collapsed. And finally, the chaos of 1945 erased him without a verdict. The official death certificate in the town registrar still lists the cause as natural heart failure.